First of all, thank you once again for inviting us to this wonderful museum in Gothenburg. The last 2 weeks we were spending time with the objects, or with the topic of the objects in the museum, and how to bring them back into the museum space. We will divide this presentation in 3 parts. At first we want to talk about, the object in the museum space. Then we want to talk about, in the second part, in a research space, an open research space, which is our adaptation of the open storage. And then we want to talk about the third part, that's the object, which is the web representation of the object. So, but first we want to start with something, with the literature, which is really wonderful because it's necessary. Just that, says the fox, to me you are still nothing more than a little boy who is just like 100,000 other little boys, and I have no need of you. And you on your part have no need of me. To you I am nothing more than a fox like 100,000 other foxes. Well, when beginning with this process, we were faced with several questions. How to bring back the old, the sensitive and sometimes holy objects back into the museum space, as well as how to link them to global contemporary issues, and to find participatory ways to present them and at the same time protect them from being injured by light, people or narrators. The approach we in a way adopted is based on 2 broader concepts of participation on the one hand and the wabi-sabi on the other hand. We consider participation to be based on trust, shared responsibility and relationship. You will need to take risks and be aware of that the museum will change too. Following wabi-sabi philosophy, we advocate for acting and not waiting for the conditions to be perfect. As you can see. We advocate for acting and not waiting for the conditions to be perfect or for stars to collide. We ask you to celebrate impermanence, imperfection and incompleteness, to celebrate the small and the intimate. Now we're going to
the first part of our participation model, meaning relationships. And then we talk about relationships, building of them, getting to know someone, or maybe even falling in love. We always talk about an interaction. It's always interaction between the two. And sometimes love is really instant, happens at first sight, and sometimes it takes stages and it takes time. And because every getting to know one from meeting one is a stage, and those stages we want to talk about dividing the space in stages. For this we propose a first encounter, and in our idea, the first encounter happens outside of our building. And we propose that you build a space that can make a first physical and only sensorial communication introduction to the object. That's why we would start with a dark space, which you can only feel the physical shape of the object. Going further to a dim light space, when you can get a glimpse of the form, and then finally entering a space where the object is central and lighted and you can finally see it. The whole process should, of course, be without any information, but only with invitation to come and invite you in. With each detail that you can get through the sensory experience, the distances between you and the object can become either big and become an abyss, or they can be really close. So we ask the question, can we turn away from each other? Or maybe we should hug each other. And that's why we invite you to come inside of the museum. When it comes to the meeting table or the meeting point inside of the museum itself, we wanted to use as many as possible methods that you have already developed inside of your testing room. And you recognize the picture, I suppose. This is for us has 2 sides. First side of a meeting table, and calling it a meeting table, comes to the point that we want it to be available inside of the museum for the first contact to be made without having to visit the rest of the exhibition. You simply continue the dialogue from the outside inside. As well as you know, this participation table that you have is based on visitor actually becoming a producer and giving their own opinion and their own visions or questions regarding objects that are visible. We would actually suggest going maybe a step further and then combining more of your methods that you have. For example, the peeping hole box that you have, giving only glimpses of the shape of an object, or even putting a whole object there. As well, when you say becoming a producer, it is important to say that visitor has a chance to write everything down, to communicate their own thoughts, but as well it can be done individually, object person level, or it can be done with other visitors as well. And you can start sort of a dialogue immediately there. From this point of the museum, we kind of thought, okay, let's go further to your space and see what can be done. Then we go to your staircase as the first 2 steps before the exhibition space itself. In the first showcase that you kind of stumbled upon, we would like to develop the object and the narrative that will now be an overall narrative of the museum, meaning being human. When we say transparency, we do refer to the need of museum to be transparent in their method and the way they approach things, and we would like to use that showcase for that. And our idea, when following your general narrative of being human and what actually applies to being human with all the constraints and opportunities and givens it may take, we propose to think about the object as a human. And we call that humanizing of an object. Because as you know, as any human, object as well has needs. It has to be taken care of. It has a really turbulent history, both dramatic and both hopeful. It has its own limitations and way of expressing them. That's why we propose this as a maybe perfect way to do it. When you come to the first staircase as well, it's a participatory and producing part of the museum as well, because you give an option to everyone to kind of individually navigate themselves through the space depending on getting to know process they want to engage with. So for example, if you want to know more about your object in a historical sense, or to know more about his needs and who takes care of him, who gives him food, who shelters him, puts him to bed, and you want to see how he functions with his relatives, you can go to the open research space, but it's kind of going home to an object and meeting it in a more personal way. Or for example, as another option, you maybe want to see how the functions and the roles of the object are defined both historically and in a contemporary moment. And then you can proceed to the second staircase showcase, where we present something that we call life history of an object. And the life history of an object is a sort of a short caption of a history an object can bring. It can be as well done in multiple ways, and we will now propose a couple. The one is what we call the diasporic context of an object, which would be following his life from date of the production to how it came to the collection, how it traveled, and how does it play now in a contemporary context of the world it's living in. As well, in the part of, when you say contemporary meets history, that gives you much more freedom in conceptualizing of the object, because you do still want to address contemporary global issues. And then, for example, you can take a historical object and put it in a context of a global theme you're having right now. And that, in a way, goes really well with the whole curator-journalist approach of things. It can be a bit more free concept. Or, as well, it can be used for participatory activities, when you say that your visitors and producers can now come and bring objects, either historical ones that they find relate to the object on show, or bring contemporary objects. So it kind of builds on further on developing of the topic that you have. As well, it goes well, in our opinion, it goes well with the idea of thematic exhibitions as well, and yes, curators that can freely conceptualize now the object in a completely new light and give it diversity. Both two spaces that we are now talking about are interesting as well, because they give you an opportunity, and we want that to keep that, of free choicing in how you will approach your getting to know process. And you can, as I said, either go further to the exhibition space, or you can go and see the needs of the object and go to the research open research space, sorry. And now Maya will tell you more about it.
Yes, so we've been here for a couple of weeks, and we met a lot of wonderful people you have working here. You really have these great resources when it comes to educators and conservators. And Adriano gave us this film called The State of Things, which we all saw. And for those who haven't seen it, that's a documented project where different people are invited into the collection, different people from all over the world, to work together through objects. And it's this kind of work where objects are not only put on display for people to see, but we're relating to them by using your heart and your hands and your mind to generate knowledge together. I would think that this is something that you've been doing and you really should be developing further and work more on when you take the storage into the museum. So we propose that you should have an open research centre. And this kind of thing that, because objects, people are different, objects are also different, and they have different needs. So we propose that within this research centre, you make these different spaces for inviting people in and relating to the objects in different ways. And we've made some examples for you that give you ideas, perhaps. For example, then we want you to have a spiritual house, because some objects are fragile. Sometimes people have a very personal connection to particular objects. So it seems to be necessary to provide some kind of private space where individuals or smaller groups of people can get this intimate atmosphere. For these religious and spiritual practices, for example, rituals, or just some issues that is very sensitive. So it's not should be open for everyone. And next, we also want you to use your hands. So we propose this experimental lab space, more open to everybody. For example, school classes should need more intensive monitoring with relating to the objects. And this could also, for example, be a space when you're inviting craftspeople who know how to do these traditional crafts and can teach that to, for example, children and families. Because when you learn a craft, when you make a replica of an object, you learn how to do it, you learn something about the object, and you will also hack it. So then you make the object more alive and continue the tradition. And also that is providing some tactile environments, which would be good for people like for people with certain disabilities, who is very good to learn about objects in that way. And we also wanted a seminar room, maybe a large space for bigger groups, or you can invite in guests, researchers, professionals, and have a discourse about the object. And perhaps also invite people in with their own objects, that's already been mentioned. And we also want this open research space to be a meeting space for where internally where curators, conservators and educators can meet and work together to create, for example, exhibitions. I think that in every case, all these three examples, it should be, the point of them is to fulfill, to have this multiple direction communication in order to collect information for visitors. And also have this, you have different kinds of experts. You have visitors, you have ordinary life experts, and you have professionals. And who are the professional, who are the visitor? That would change places, change the roles. And actually, to sum up briefly, we want the collection to be a mediator, where people and objects meet and learn from each other. And yes, we're talking a lot about this material existence of our lovely things. But we are living in a modern world where all these objects also have virtual reality, which is also a big part of this network. And to speak more about that, that will be you, Philip.
There's a lot of exercising we have to do. That's also very humanizing as well. I'm going to talk about creating a participatory online collection experience, because bringing objects back doesn't necessarily mean, like we just said, to physically put them in the museum space, but it's about bringing the collection closer to the audience. It's about making it more relevant to the people,
It's simply humanizing them. And after my presentation, hopefully you will see how you as a museum can turn your visitors into producers, and how these online participatory strategies can help you fulfill your wider institutional goals. And what we propose here allows you to not only work on online. We aim at connecting the online with the offline, because what makes them together is the person. This is the person who's genuinely interested in your collection. And for this person, it doesn't matter if it's on the internet or on site. And I'll just start with showing some features that we consider a first step in creating this online collection tool. Most of them are known to you, so I'll only explain in detail a couple of them. The picture you saw before is just our idea of how this online collection website could look like. So you go on the website, and instead of this boring list of things, you just see amazing pictures of your collection that you're immediately drawn into. So within this idea of my collection, that the user is allowed to pick and choose things that he really likes, be it during his visit, or when he's at home after the visit, or even if he's far, far away, he can still get in touch with the collection and decide what it is that he likes in particular. And of course, tagging is well known from everywhere now, but it doesn't necessarily mean a keyword, a category. It can also be geotagging, it can also be color coding. And the latter was used by the Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum in New York, and it allows you to see the objects in particular which have particular color. You might need it for your work, you might need it for your interior design, you might need it for many different purposes, and it's a lovely way also to browse the collection. As for the extra resources, when you work in a museum, when you create exhibitions, you do a lot of publications, there's a lot of extra resources you produce about your collection. It would be great to make them available to the public, be videos, curators talking about your objects, or when we think about this inclusiveness of people with disabilities, you might want to have other descriptions of your collection so that people can actually know what it is that you have there, and it doesn't necessarily have to be produced by the museum, it can be produced by anybody who's willing to help. You can also put articles or all the publications that you created about the collections. And when talking about external links, it's about reaching out to your users and going onto the platforms that are dedicated to content. That's where people go to look for things. You can contribute to Wikipedia articles with your great collections. You can improve this free encyclopedia of knowledge by adding not only text but also pictures if they're of course properly licensed for Wikipedia Commons. You may also use Flickr, like the National Maritime Museum, which added their collection to the Flickr Commons, but they also use this tool to create an exhibition, and they asked a group of people to choose photos from their collection to put on Flickr and curate an exhibition on site. You can also use Pinterest, like the Europeana, who, because we don't often think that fashion is something that you can see in museums, so they, as an aggregation tool for all the European collections, they created this Pinterest, this pinboard, to show all the fashion-related collections on this website. So once you have all these features and you worked on kind of structurizing your collection, categorizing, adding all that content to it, what can you do with it? What can this be used for? Well, for example, you can have a timeline of the collection, which doesn't necessarily have to be when the objects were made, but like Maria was saying, you can have a timeline of the history, the life history of the object as well, visualized. You can visualize your collection on a map, which is especially relevant to an ethnographic collection because it allows you to see where the objects came from and their difficult history as well. You may also connect your online and on-site presence by having a collection of the month. Maybe one of your users was particularly good in assembling this nice collage of things, and you would like to, or other users can vote for this collection to become a collection of the month, which you can also exhibit on site. Or you can go beyond the tags and categories of the old system. You can maybe have a broader display that is related to a theme, maybe food-related objects, or something more serious like one of those global issues like history of slavery or trafficking, anything that is relevant to your mission but is also reflected in your collection. Or you can use your curators to write a more accessible article about the collections that they particularly find interesting, as well as the guest curators. Well, you might be listening to all of that and thinking, yeah, it's very ambitious, it's very big, we're not ready for that, maybe we'll wait, there's not enough money. All these excuses that we very often hear, and it's not only here, but it's everywhere. Every museum has difficulties. But if you're open about it, that your data is incomplete or inaccurate, if you're very transparent and say, please help us because we need your help to improve it. You can treat it as an opportunity, actually. You can improve your information, but you can also make it available in a better way for the people. You can also say, oh, let's wait to join a bigger project, Europeana is thinking of something, or the Swedish Ministry of something, will create a big project. But if we relate to this philosophy of wabi-sabi, and we think about the prototype as the product, then actually everything that you do is work in progress all the time. So there's never this idea of finished product that you will have and you then only put it online when it's ready and complete. And your small project may not be contradictory with the big one. Maybe it will actually help to improve the big project or supplement it. So it's always better to start with what you have and just get going than wait for the idea. You also say that, oh, this idea can work better for a local museum that has regional collections, people who are close to us, they can relate to the collection, and in the context of World Culture Museum, our audience is spread across the world, they don't know we exist. But do you think that technology is an amplifier and today you can reach anyone, even on a little Pacific island? Then actually, the only thing you have to do is just let them know that you are there. For that, you use the existing platforms. You go where your users are. You use the already content-dedicated websites. So to sum up the whole presentation, once you humanize the object, once you created a space where everybody can meet and look what's in the collection from there, once you connected the offline with the online, you are first of all showing the collection to public, to the wider public, than you probably ever thought about. You're collecting users' knowledge, which is improving also your knowledge. You're facilitating the reuse of the collection, because you never know what creative ideas people have and what can come out of their collection. You're engaging your users' curatorial motivation, because they're also capable of creating an exhibition or curating a set of collection. You're networking to other collections, because there's so many of them, so you're helping actually to improve them. And you're simply being an amazing institution, so isn't that great? And I'll just finish off with a quote from Adriana. Here it is: when I'm drinking coffee, I'm becoming part of it. Thank you.